The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 2021, and we are back with more episodes of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author, and this is going to be the first of 2 episodes where we are going to be spending some time in Miami-Dade County. It's much more than Cuban sandwiches and cafecito down there. We've actually got a lot of other amazing things going on. And so let's take a couple of hours and let's dive into it. The first group that we're going to talk to is actually not even beer at all. We're actually going to be chatting with Ceiba. They are a relatively new winery, and these are country wines, so wines not with grapes, but with other tropical fruits, which are fantastic. They also will be doing spirits sometime in the future, and they are also producing mead, which is honey wine for those of you that are not totally familiar with the Renaissance Festival circuit. And I actually found out about Ceiba from the incredible hospitality of Bousa Brewing co-founder Alan Espina, who let me know about them and actually collaborated with them on a mead that is found at Beat Culture, which I have a bottle of, and of course you will probably see me try some on a future post if you follow our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter profiles. And you can do that. Instagram and Twitter, we're at Florida Beer Blog. Facebook, we're at FL Beer Blog, just to let you know. So we're going to chat with Sean McClain. He is a co-founder, and he's also the head fermenter, shall we say, of all the products that they have there. So we'll talk a little bit more about his background, learning how to make these wonderful beverages, finding their location in the Bird Road Arts District, very close to both Unseen Creatures and Lincoln's Beard, and talk about taking these beverages and getting the word out amongst Miami-Dade County.
To start, having spoken to Ellen at Beat Culture and realizing that mead is more than just that beverage that I get at the Renaissance Festival every year, it's starting to really show up in Florida and South Florida in particular. Has there always been sort of a mead culture down here in Miami-Dade County?
I'm not really too sure. I know that you're absolutely right. It's becoming a lot more popular in the last couple, I would say months, years even. I went to my first big mead share about 4 years ago, and it was to taste meads from Garage East in Tampa, Garage East Meadery in Tampa. And I was floored because they were traditional meads. They were not fruited, they were not spiced. And I absolutely love how the honey was represented. Each honey that he used was represented. And I started tasting after that. I kind of became a mead person myself, and taste things from Schramm's, Garage East, trying to get my hands as much as possible to try to, broaden my horizons, I guess you would say. As my dad had drank mead when he was younger, but he always said that the meads he drank were questionable. And when I started bringing him some of this other stuff, he said, "Yeah, this is great." That's kind of what it piqued my interest. And when we started taking some meads, the shares down here, there was like a contingency of people in Dade and Broward and West Palm that really have always been drinking mead, and started to kind of migrate towards some of those people and some of the shares that they were having. And I think in the last year and a half, 2 years, I think it's really gone to another level of garnering people's attention down here in Dade County. And I couldn't be more excited about the way it's going.
That's awesome. Obviously, one of the things that you mentioned are with garage yeast, that they made different meads out of different honeys. How difficult is it to source different varieties of honeys in Dade County?
Actually, it's in Dade County. It's pretty great down here. There's some local apiaries and local businesses that have all sorts of honey that you could use to make some of these traditionals. I went about 2 months ago and bought all sorts of different honey: Spanish needles, gumbo limbo, Jamaican dogwood, citrus raw, sea grape. And we just did a honey tasting, not a meat tasting of the honey itself. And they were fairly fantastic and fairly different. And I myself am going to explore making some of these traditional meads also in a similar fashion, where people could have the representation of the honey before and then what it would taste like after it's been fermented. But I think actually Dade, extending all the way to Homestead and even going into Marathon County, the honeys that they offer in the counties and Brewer, and they're just simply amazing. So I think that the honey varietals we have down here in Dade, Broward, and Marathon County they're fantastic.
So with the meads that you're starting with, obviously there's a lot of fruit in adjuncts in the meads. When you start with a new honey, do you just try to do a standard mead just to see how the honey is, and then see what sort of adjuncts would go in that would accentuate that honey?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you use a honey like wildflower, which is wildflower and orange blossom here in Miami and Florida, I think in general, mostly across the US too, are the ones that are used most in a most foundational fashion in terms of how you want to pair it. I usually like to taste the honey before, see whether or not it's going to be deep and rich. Is it going to mimic more of a dark honey molasses type flavor, or is it going to mimic more of a light, very light flavored, very, very light on the palate? So when I use some of these honeys and I want to pair them, I definitely taste it before. I like to try to sometimes think of a good flavor combination or a fruit that I want to use. And then I try to go out and seek a honey that may complement that fruit well. I'll give you a good example. I bought a large batch of black mangrove honey, and I had never tasted it before. And hindsight being 2020, I'm not sure I would have bought that large batch, but it ended up going very well, mixing very well with a mead that I made that I used cranberries in. And I would do it again. I would mix it again with cranberries. I wanted to buy the black mangrove honey to kind of make a traditional on its own, but it was so aromatic that it had I wouldn't say pungent aroma to it, definitely not. But it definitely had a different aroma that you would expect from your standard honey. And what I ended up doing is midway through, when there was fermentation, I decided I was going to use a certain fruit to kind of complement it well, and it ended up working out beautifully. And sometimes that's sometimes one of those things that when you're making a beer, even, or you're making a wine or something, you think to yourself, man, this will go well with something else. Or even if it doesn't, then you could always toss it out and just say, experiment failed. We'll try again in the future. But that's pretty much what I aim for whenever I buy or whenever I go for a certain honey, is whether or not I would like to pair it with something. I have made traditionals. I bought a Mamey blossom honey from the Mamey tree, and it's a very, very, very deep, dark, rich honey. And it ended up traditional, and it ended up being very well. I've served it to people, and it keeps coming back as a honey that has a lot of molasses character to it.
One of the things that you mentioned on top of the fruits is that you're also going to be making non-grape wines, or sort of country wines, as they're called. How did you get started down that avenue?
I've always liked red wines. I've always been I wouldn't say an avid drinker, but I always definitely appreciated them. But I thought to myself, meads, when I make a mead, I kind of picture a drink that you drink 3 or 4 ounces of at a time. And then you can do it before dinner or after dinner, or maybe even in the mid-afternoon. I always picture mead as something you drink a couple ounces of and put away. I wanted to make a product that you could definitely drink more of. And I think that's when the fruit wines came in. Not everybody could appreciate a drink that has honey in it, because you have to get people. You mentioned, like, when you questioned earlier about the Dade County mead scene. I think if you start making country wines, you kind of fill that gap of between red wines and mead. And that's kind of what I started doing. I think people in Dade and Broward, individuals in Dade and Broward, West Palm, even any Orlando, Tampa, could appreciate a nice mango wine that's not overly sweet, that has nice characteristics of the fruit itself without having that extra sweetness. It's just the appreciation of the fruit itself, which you could also definitely do in mead. But sometimes the feedback has been, it's a little bit sweeter than I'd like.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've poured some of these country wines, I've really tried to be creative with them in terms of the fruits I've used in them. And I think the country wines give an appreciation of the fruit itself in its purest form. It's just the fruit, some water, and yeast.
That's kind of amazing. In terms of the two, which is harder to make?
I would always say a mead. I mean, they're both very difficult to make. I can't say, I wouldn't say that one is easier than the other, but I think making a perfect mead, and I'm not sure if there's such a thing as a perfect mead, but trying to perfect your version of what a mead should be, it's very intricate, because it depends on how high you want to start your fermentation. It depends on where you want it to finish. Do you want it to finish dry or sweet? And then after that, do you want to add more fruit in secondary? Do you want to back sweeten it? If you back sweeten it, you have to be careful not to overdo it. And then you have to have the perfect blend of pH, acidity. And these are all things that you really take into account when you're doing the country wines as well. But I think with a mead, it's when you're dealing with additional honey sweetness and all that, you got to make sure that the honey that you're using, the back sweeten, which 9 times out of 10 is going to be the same honey you use to ferment, is not going to alter the flavor. And if it maybe does slightly, you need to make sure that it gives the meat has enough time to breathe and the meat has enough time to come together before you serve it. So there's a lot of intricacies, and with the country wines as well. But I would say if I had to gauge one as being a little bit more difficult, I'd say mead, based because of the sweetness that you may want to get it to. And some people leave them dry. And even if you leave them dry, you still got to take flavors into account and how you want it to finish and such. So
now, many people have on this podcast and elsewhere mentioned that Miami is really cocktail culture, that it's about vodka or rum mixed drinks and so on. And here you are coming in with another beverage that has a long-standing historical tradition in other regions of the world, but not quite so much in Miami-Dade. Has the early reception been positive, and do you see a large following for the meads and ciders and wines that you're going to be making?
I think based on what the mission of the meadery, of the winery, meadery, cidery, whatever, I think based on the mission of what we're trying to do, I think that the reception will open up the door. I believe Alan from Bee Culture started with some of these tropical fruit meads, but that's been our goal from day one, is to do things that people may be familiar with down here in the Latin cultures, and then work and then open up the door for them to try other things. Like it's funny because when I've done black currant meads down here, and I always, unless you're an avid mead drinker, get questions as to what a black currant is or what a red currant is. As opposed to if I pour a guava mead or a mango mead or a pineapple mead, everybody in here knows what that is. And mostly across the US too. But if I've sent a mead with chirimoya, which is unknown, which is known as sugar apple, but not very commonly found. People in the Midwest, have asked me, what is this? Where do you find this? And so it's kind of funny how you see the different, like if I serve a chirimoya mead down here, I've had anybody who I've given it to down here has known what it is. It's in the soursop family. So it's, I think doing things like that where people familiarize themselves with the fruit, get an expression of what the fruit is, and then find their way to trying different things where they're like, might be a little bit more tart, might be a little bit more acidic in terms of the black currant, the Marionberry, things of that sort that Schramm's uses. And I think it will open up the door. The country wines have gone over extremely well down here. I served at a recent event, I served Peruvian wine, Peruvian-based drink. I fermented it. It's called chicha morada, which is a purple corn, pineapple rinds, clover, and cinnamon. Usually, it's a very refreshing drink, and I was able to get my hands on a large amount of it. And I fermented and I poured it at a recent event. People were going absolutely crazy over it because they said it kind of reminds them of a nice red wine with a little bit more spice to it. So, and that being said, there's a bartender down here. I can't recall his name right now, but as you were asking that question, I thought about there's a bartender down here who actually works at the South Beach Food and Wine Festival, who asked me for one of the meads, and I gave him a Cuban coffee mead with cinnamon. Ooh. And when I gave him the bottle, the first thing he did is try it. He said how amazing it was, but then he said that he had about half a bottle left, and he made 2 cocktails out of it. And he told me he liked to use more of that specific mead and other meads that I may make in order to incorporate in some of his cocktails.
Interesting.
So I think that people down here and individuals are very creative. There's a lot of Latin and cultural influence that influences some of the drinks and the cocktails and things that are going to be made. I do think that once, let's say, bee culture continues to kick out some meads, and we do also, and there's some other up and coming meaderies in Orlando and Broward, Fort Myers. I think that you're going to see this time next year, maybe even 2022, you're going to see it's going to be very, very heavy mead and session wine scene down here.
Awesome. Well, as you continue to build that, obviously, where can people get your meads and your wines? Because I know that you're going to be building in Bird Road, close to where Lincoln's Beard and Unseen Creatures is, but that is not open as of yet, correct?
Well, I am open. I'm commercial. I can produce, no problem. We actually had just been going and trying to get our 2APS license for offsite consumption, for bottle offsite consumption. And we're supposed to have that hopefully by the end of the day today, actually, as we speak, because I just spoke to a county rep. So our goal, our plan is to continue to produce. We could do that legally, no problem. The location's open. People can visit as long as they message us and say they want to come by and visit. And we're constantly in the marketing phase of things, since we're not immediately doing a tap room for on-premise consumption. So people can message us, and we have no problem pouring some of our product for anybody who wants to pass by. And if we get our offsite consumption license, we'd be able to sell almost immediately. As soon as we have that license, we'll be able to start bottling, and we'll have things in bottles ready to sell. And we're hoping that happens before Christmas, so we could maybe get stuff in people's hands to share with their families and even try. But our first bottle run will be a cherry key lime mead. I've made it before. It went over fairly well. The mead itself is not overly sweet. When I first began making meads, I thought the sweeter the better, but not necessarily. I think you could find, like we were speaking about earlier, it's really intricate when you're trying to make a great mead, or when you're trying to make your version of what you think a great mead should be. Mm-hmm. And you really want the fruit to be expressed much more, and the flavors to be expressed much more than the sweetness. But we're hoping that we can have those bottles ready to be sold within the next 4 to 5 days as of this conversation. So we are open. We're welcoming people. We're constantly giving stuff away. We're always at the warehouse on Saturdays and Sundays. Should I say, I got to change that mindset, not the warehouse. We're at the business. We're there every weekend. And we're going to be there as much as possible during the evenings, during the week too, because we know people work. That's kind of what our goals are for now. And as far as on-site consumption, we're going to start working on that very beginning of next year. The on-site consumption gets a little trickier in terms of what the county requires from you, and our spacing is we don't have the biggest space right now, but we are definitely working on that, because we love to serve ciders and carbonated products too, because we know during the summertime it gets really hot in Miami.
No, definitely. All right. Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
I do like to mention that I do, I wouldn't be doing justice if I didn't mention the team that I have working with me. I don't know if you mind.
Oh, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah. So we got involved, and my business partner and I, Eric Seidman, but it's mostly been a close family and friends business starting up. And my dad, David McClain, is involved. My brother, Brian McClain, is involved. And a longtime friend of mine, James Ochoa, is involved. And as a team, we've been able to really trend this out and hammer this home. And, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you without them for sure.
Awesome. Hopefully be able to come down and meet everybody once you open and try some more of those amazing meads.
Even if you happen to be in Miami, please message us, because we're still going to be able to sell. We're still going to be able to pour. We're still going to be able to do marketing out of our warehouse. So please, if you happen to be down here, just feel free to message us and pass by.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And best of luck with all the new fun things coming down your way.
Thank you so much, David. Take care. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey there, fellow Florida beer enthusiast. We now have an official Patreon. In case you are unfamiliar, Patreon is a great way for a community to support the creators of the content you love, like the Florida Beer Podcast. If you're enjoying the content we bring you on this show, or any of the shows on the Florida Podcast Network, you can help ensure that content keeps coming through for a small monthly donation equal to the price of a couple cups of coffee a month. So for just a few lattes, you can make a real difference. And the first goal of FPN's Patreon program is to help me get a better mobile setup to use whenever I can start traveling to great breweries here in the state of Florida. So if today's episode brought you valuable insights and information, please help see that these episodes keep coming by becoming a patron. Head to patreon.com/Florida Podcast Network to support the show, and it comes with some pretty sweet benefits. Want access to bonus extras? Nostalgic for these old school radio shoutouts? Lover of good quality merchandise? Well, not only will your monthly contribution help me grow the show, but you'll get some cool stuff in return. So please head to patreon.com/Florida Podcast Network for further details to become a patron. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Florida Podcast Network. You can also find the link right there in the show notes or by visiting floridabeerpodcast.com. Thank you in advance for your continued support. So that interview was a little bit recent. Unfortunately, the next interview is a little bit out of date. This is the last of our pre-COVID interviews that we recorded kind of before the bottom fell out on the world, unfortunately. But this interview was from February of 2020 at Focal Beer Cafe. If you've never heard the name, you may have heard their predecessor, Bousa Brewing. Between Bousa and now, they had a complete change of ownership, a complete change of vision, and what they want to do with Focal Beer Cafe is actually quite amazing. So we are going to be chatting with brand ambassador Roy Moreno and head brewer Carlos de la Rosa. I'm not sure if they are still there as of this recording. I think that they are still with Focal Beer Cafe. If they aren't, I would love to get an update from Focal. Love to know what's going on. Obviously, COVID has put a bit of a kibosh on pretty much everything, but it's still great to hear some of the plans that they have, try some of the amazing beers that Carlos was making, and even get a little insight into the beautiful artwork that was actually going up as we were chatting. Enjoy. Let's start with this because Bousa's been around for a couple of years now. The team that started, the team that brewed there is gone. They are no longer in the picture. New team, new ownership, new brewer. How did that changeover sort of start?
Definitely Bousa was going rough path in that moment. I was part of the transition. I came here when the last head brewer went out of the company. I started brewing here. We fixed a lot of the problems dealing with the product. That is my part. But it was impossible to recover for that 2 years that was a rough path for Bousa. Right now, we have a new ownership. Right now, I'm completely the head brewer of the company. I'm involved in all our products. We are taking a lot of care in the production, in all the quality of our beers. I think that's the most important part. That was the first part of the change. Right now, we're changing our tap room. We changed the name, but first we changed the product. We ensure the quality of the product.
And for people that knew Bousa Brewing, either out in the market or come to the tap room, are a lot of the cores still the same? Did you have to rebuild the recipes from ground up, or did you take the recipes, find the nearest trash can, make them disappear, and then kind of go from there?
See, it's important to know that beer like this, the brewery, is a business. Okay, people do that to get money, for sure, to produce money.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's important to know that it's a lot of passion behind a brewery, a lot of passion. People that do that, many people do that to invest, to get money, but passion is really important. What I want to know is that actually we are in a new board in the brewery. The last one maybe have another plans. Actually, we can see the passion in the business, inside the brewery.
Yeah.
And this is important for us, to see that they want to grow up, to do. We don't have any restrictions to create the new recipes, for example. Mm-hmm. Actually, that Carlitos is a chemical guy. He prepared a really, really good recipes. He studied in Germany. He can talk about more about it, but it's really important to preserve the real beer recipes in the brewery.
So for your questions, Bousa was something that we have in our hearts. When I get here, I work in different breweries before Bousa. My point of view, Bousa was in a situation that was really tough. And that's my heart, my mind in Bousa, to create something to help Bousa. So that's why it's not like I took all the recipes and I put it in the trash. I grabbed some recipes, I did it again. For example, our triple came from Bousa, from Harold Perez. He was brewing here with me, right now in Beza Sur. And that triple, I didn't touch anything. And something that we can take from Bousa, we take it. And we create over it. So we take Bousa in our hearts, and now we are going with Falco.
Okay. And you said that you had studied in Germany. How long were you there?
Yeah,
what kind of things did you really pick up that you couldn't pick up anywhere else?
It was an interesting experience because I started in Chicago. I started in Civil Institute.
Okay.
And all American beers. It was great for me. It was perfect. Then I went to Germany to study in Dolmens. It was all tradition. I was focused more on tradition. It was the core of the beer, really the influence that those beer has in America, and understand the influences that we have right now in America. Mm-hmm. So I think America is like a bunch of all the countries in one, and even in culture, but for the beer, it's incredible. Mm-hmm. Because Germans all about malt, water, UK all about hops, malts, America it's all about everything. So what you got in Germany, quality control, love for the beer, understand the tradition, understand the respect that we need to have for the beer. And here, you mix everything here in America. For me, it was a great experience.
A lot of people, I guess, don't realize that when it comes to Central America, South America, a lot of the beer styles are traditional German recipes because of the large influx of German expats. Or do you keep that in mind when you build some of the recipes?
Definitely. I got that on my blood right now. I really get into it. So I always think that in my beer, trying to respect all that knowledge and experience and tradition that they have. Obviously, you get your hands tied if you try to respect completely the Reinheitsgebot. But I think a lot of our beers has that spirit. Definitely. The care of the malt, the care of the water, all our beer has that.
But I've also noticed, to completely go against the last question I asked, that Miami and the Miami beer scene is very different. It seems to be very fruit-forward, adjunct-heavy,
a lot of sours.
For example, here in Miami, definitely I have Kolsch, I have a Pilsner. I respect those styles. I didn't touch it. But definitely you're in the market that's looking for something new, something different, something experimental.
Fruity.
Yeah. And you need to work with that. And you need to work with that in the best way you can. Always in my bar, you will have beer, traditional beers, and some experimentation, some fruit, some adjuncts.
Sours.
Definitely sours. That's the way I deal with it. So I always have my traditional beers, and then I add a couple of experimentations to it.
Gotcha. And obviously, speaking with Miami, one of the things that we discussed, because the last time that I was here was when Bousa had first opened. We're sitting in the tap room, and the wall that's opposite the taps, for those of you that haven't seen, was big and beautiful and lush with all this greenery. But as we're sitting here today, for those of you listening, you'll hear clicks and beeps and things. You actually have graffiti artists in here in day 2 of building what is an absolutely magnificent mural on the walls. What is the image, what is the future looking like for Bousa? Because it's not just Bousa anymore.
Yes, Focal is a new brand for the tappers. We want to create an atmosphere that people can come in the morning even, get a beer, eat something, even get a coffee. A beer with coffee will be better.
Or a coffee beer.
Definitely.
The liquid bread is the beer. Maybe planning some stuff here at the bar, listening some music. That's what they want to do. It's like a co-working space. It's a new concept of bar, of place that we are creating in Focal. For sure, the artworks is really important. That people can see something interesting, something with art. Beer is art. All the recipes have art. People have to learn something with drinking a beer. They have to learn something about the beer that they are drinking. Even it's the same with the art. People can see the art and maybe know something about the artist, something about history, why they paint that. Maybe it has to be with the beer too. That's what they want to do, something to mix art with beer, with music. It's a real beautiful atmosphere.
Focal will be a place to spend a lot of time in. We're trying to create a co-working space. Co-working space, just to give it a name, is a place to be, to talk with people, to connect with others. That's why we're doing collaboration with all of artists. I think we are here in Little River. It's a part of Miami that is growing right now. A lot of artists, a lot of galleries. So that's why we want to be part of that. And all the people that is working, most of the people that is working here right now in the art, in collaboration with beers, is part of the community, is part of our our idea, our culture, is know about beer, also work, enjoy, knows the people that work here, knows the brewers, not just like you go, grab a beer, enjoy, talk with your friends. It's like more like a family, like a place to spend time.
The tap room is Focal.
Yes.
And there's going to be more tap rooms, correct? How many tap rooms are you eventually going to look into? And will they have Bousa breweries attached to them? Will they have different breweries? Or will this be the main distribution point for all the Focal?
See, the plan is in 2020 to open maybe 2 other tap rooms. For sure, they will have to get a small brew house, maybe, I don't know, 3 barrels or 2 barrels, something small. And this continue being the headquarters to produce the coarse beers.
So you've got a 3.5 barrel pilot system.
We have a 3.5 barrel system. We definitely play, we just create, we just do whatever we want.
But then you'll use the 15 barrel that you also have in the back, that's your core.
Yeah, the 15 barrels is the most used brew house here in Bousa right now. And when the other chapters opens, we're definitely gonna brew our core brands, beers. And then in those locations, we're gonna brew specials and small systems.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that this is pen, because what I've started to notice, the new trend in craft beer, especially in the state of Florida, is not to necessarily distribute, as in get your kegs into restaurants, get your cans and bottles on shelves. It's more to open up multiple locations. You take a look up north, Old City has a couple locations. Big Top is in several locations. It's interesting. Was that intentional to maybe take the distribution aspect that a lot of people such as Wynwood and Concrete Beach, were so heavy on, and sort of let that go off to the side in favor of this physical expansion?
We also have distribution, regular distribution. And we're going to keep that because we only have one brand in distribution. There is a blonde ale, Miami Blonde. We're going to keep that in distribution. But definitely in Florida, with the laws requirement, it's difficult for an independent brewery fight against distributions and other companies that have incredible amount of money put into marketing just to distribute your beers. That's why, from the point of view of the business, it's great to open different locations. And you have, you know that your tap room is the best way that the business makes money. So if it's difficult to compete in distribution because of the law and because of those companies that are right now in the game.
And a head start.
So you need to figure out something. Why not open other bars? You can find a focal bar focus on sours. It's going to be just sours. And we're going to provide the core beers.
Okay.
All right?
Excellent. Obviously, I'm taking a look at your shirt. It's got the logo, Focal, but your beer and cafe.
Yeah.
Are you going to be opening up a kitchen here? Are the other locations going to have kitchens? What's that going to look like?
The point is to have Beer Cafe. It's a name for a place that you want to spend time in. Definitely, we need to provide our customers with all the things: food, coffee, snacks,
Good music.
good music, and beer. Definitely. Our main point always going to be the beer, but you need to provide an atmosphere for the people to integrate to the bar.
Excellent. And obviously a big part of the atmosphere is the artwork that we had mentioned before, but you had also mentioned knowing the stories and behind the artwork and the artists. Can you tell us a little bit about this? Because I'm loving life. With the second mural in the back, I'm just noticing that there are letters that they have not painted yet, which I'm assuming will be painted. Please go into this because I just want to know.
Even for us,
And you've got a huge smile on your face, so I know that you're as excited about this as I am.
even we are discovering right now what they are painting. For sure we saw before the artwork, but for example, the word is irreverent. Could be like a playground. People can play some sports over there, even soccer or football.
So the art behind that, it's a Colombian artist, incredible technique. You can see right now what she's doing.
I mean, there's
Ledania is his name.
Ledania is the name.
Okay. There's a huge table full of empty spray cans, and you can hear somebody shaking a spray can in the distance right now, which is amazing. I didn't realize that this would be spray paint.
Yeah. Basically what we did was, hey Ledania, you're an artist, do whatever you want in the world.
Okay.
And she is right now expressing herself in our walls. And that's what we want for our space, for our brewery. That's what we want. Right now she's doing that. Gianfranco is another artist, is from Venezuela. He's been in Miami a lot of time. And he's doing the front part of the brewery.
The facade.
So you can see the front. It's a combining stuff. We're gonna put the story of Ledania and whatever she is creating right now here, and we're gonna tell that to our customers.
And
Same thing with the beer. Same thing with the beers.
Yes, and we will continue with other 2 walls with another 2 artists, local artists.
Okay.
Next week.
Obviously, Wynwood is very famous for constantly changing over the walls. Is that something that you have plans for, or is this really what you want to stick with for the immediate future?
Right now is here, Little River. I think Wynwood is a great place. You have 5 breweries walking distance. It's an amazing place to be, but it's crowded. It's different.
Yes.
What we want is something true local. Little River, Miami, something that is not touristic, just touristic. That's what we want.
So let's chat about the beer a little bit. I guess what kind of stuff do you generally have on tap? Can people usually find when you come in? And do you feel, these are two very different questions, do you feel that the Miami beer scene, the average Miami drinker, is getting educated up to the level of something like Chicago, obviously?
I think Miami customer is getting involved in the craft scene. The problem is, like right now, a lot of Miami people is coming from Latin America and with different part of the world. And definitely we are used to, because I'm from Latin America also, we are used to just a single German beer, easy to drink, refreshing, and that's how we see the beer.
Yeah.
But definitely customers keep coming, asking questions, trying new stuff. I have customers here that tell me, I like Corona because it's refreshing. So what I do normally with those customers is, all right, our most refreshing beer is Miami Blonde right now. It's our core, it's a blonde ale. And I start to explain that. But try this one, and this is more bitter, and this is more sweet. Look at the color. How do you think we create those colors in the beers? And then they understand, and when you're drinking something that you understand what it has inside, you enjoy, and you enjoy the process of being in a bar, or enjoy the process of drinking. It's not just a drink a beer for refreshing, it's a drink a beer to know the aromatics, the colors, the flavors, in what part of your tongue you're feeling this particular beer. That's the experience that we want to express. That's the experience that Miami customers need right now, I guess.
Yeah, it's about education. Our main work is educate people about beer. For example, people that don't know so much about craft prefer high alcohol beers, for example.
Yeah.
Say 10%, 11%, I want that beer every time. And then, okay, you can start with that beer, but then they want to learn more about beer. Okay, what next? Okay, try hops. This beer is all about hops. This is all about fermentation. Smell that the yeast smell, even the malts, the combination. That's the people then start to be more, to know more about beers. That we have to do the first step.
Are there any styles that you really want to get into, but you have to grow your customer base and get them used to certain things before you can leap and do something like an Ode Brune or whatnot?
You know what? Incredible as you hear is, I think we need to come back to the basics. We need to come back to the Pilsner. We need to come back to create a really good Pilsner, craft Pilsner, not what other companies are trying to sell. You know, I think we can teach customers, we can create a habit of investigation, of knowing, by going to the basics. Like, this is beer, and look the transformation of the beer. Look the transformation. I think that path is way better, to know what you're drinking, to know the effort that is in a beer.
And it's funny that you mentioned that. A lot of people have mentioned that, there are a lot of breweries that are opening up that, they don't want to do the New England IPAs and they don't want to do the dessert stouts because they've sort of snapped back to the classic styles and getting those right. Do you think that's hip enough to survive Miami?
I think you need to have everything. Definitely tap in Miami with all traditional beers, you're not going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But also I think with a tap with all innovations, you either. So you need to have a combination, and you need to use that combination to teach your customer, to create something with your brand, More than come here, drink a beer, watch a game. It's more like come here, drink a beer, and know what you're drinking. And why are you paying the amount of money you're paying for a beer? Because of all of the effort that you have.
Excellent. And if people obviously want to see the artwork, want to see the full transformation, and especially when the other locations are going to open up, where's the best place that they can go to get that info?
To continue growing up, you said?
Yeah. Somebody wants to get more
Instagram.
information on folk.
Yeah, but definitely if you need information of our events, of our beers, or our new locations, or what we're doing, go to Focal Beer Cafe in Instagram. Follow us on Instagram. We always post everything in Instagram. And we're working on a web page still.
I did notice that because you search for Bousa and it comes to Focal now. It says you're still getting there. So
Even we get a special beer. It's a combination.
It's a black and tan.
Yeah, the black and tan.
Yeah, it's Miami Blonde with OG Stout. So it's black and tan. The converge between Focal and Bousa. Bousa is in our heart, from my point of view. I really like Bousa. This thing right now, it was the logo of Bousa. Mm-hmm. Right now is the logo of Miami Blonde. Because that was part of us.
Okay.
You know? And you need to take your story, your history, and go to the future with that.
So the sort of beer with the anchor whale tail logo will still be with you, but it won't be the company logo any longer. It'll be your big core.
Yeah, definitely. Our distribution beer is Miami Blonde. We love that beer. I think it's a really good product, and that's why we anchor that product with this logotype, because it's part of our history.
Gotcha. Well, I'm definitely excited to see what comes next for your history. So thank you both very much, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you to you.
So past, present, and future, there's a lot of great things happening in Miami-Dade County. We've got one more episode in Miami-Dade, and for that one, we're going to be heading even a little bit farther south than the places that we spoke to today. Who is that? Well, you're just going to have to wait for the next episode to find out. Florida Beer Podcast is a production of FloridaBeerBlog.com and Florida Beer Media. You can find us at FloridaBeerMedia.com. We are available on social media at Florida Beer Blog on Twitter and Instagram, at FL Beer Blog on Facebook. You can email us as well at FloridaBeerBlog@gmail.com. We are also a very proud production of the Florida Podcast Network. And if you want to find out more about the shows on the Florida Podcast Network, you can do so very easily. The best thing to do is to go onto Facebook and do a search for FPN Insiders. It's our exclusive members-only site where you can talk about your favorite shows, get more information, chat with your favorite hosts, tell us the places where you've been, and so on. It's a fantastic place to be, and I know Jemmy's got a lot of great plans for some awesome shows that are coming up, so that's FPN Insiders on Facebook. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer is Steve Piccola. Executive producer and Grand High Poobah is Jemmy Lagonier. Please make sure to subscribe to us on the podcasting app of your choice. Like us, give us a nice juicy 5-star review. Head down to your favorite sports arena, spray paint us on the side of the wall. It's not like anybody's going to see us just yet, but once the games start getting more people there, maybe you'll see the spray paint. Thank you so much. We will see you next episode, and make sure to drink Florida Craft.